Mark, let's get to you first, okay? The Prime Minister's saying it's a plan about not shutting things down. There's no real change between now and 2030. It's all about 2030, 2050. I know you don't believe him. What do you think?
Well, Scott Morrison talked himself inside out, didn't he, Paul? He said we've got to do this because the rest of the world is doing this. And then he said, no, China's not. Indonesia's not. India's not. And you can add to that Brazil and Russia. So what is the point? If there's big slabs of the emitting nations around the world not doing this, what are we? We're slaves to the bond market in Zurich and New York. And why would anyone go down the European path where it's economic and energy carnage at the moment? They can't get back to nuclear and coal and gas quickly enough to avoid all the rationing and shortages they've got. Even China took some baby steps towards renewables. And now they've got power rationing and they are putting in orders for as much coal production as they can possibly manage. So Scott Morrison talked himself inside out, and then he says, oh, well, the answer's technology. Give me a break. Carbon capture and storage, we've wasted billions on this already over 20 years in Australia. It hasn't produced anything. And mass-scale batteries, that's not feasible. And then they come to the latest cavalry riding over the top of the hill, hydrogen. Hydrogen is inherently an economic inefficient thing to do because you're using energy to make energy. And he mentioned steel, for example. Green steel using hydrogen takes 15 times as much electricity as normal steel, 15 times. And then you have a look at cars. To move a hydrogen car, you lose 75% of the energy that you started with. To heat a home with hydrogen, you lose 38% of the energy that you started with. Why would anyone in their right mind think that any of this is commercially viable? And government somehow is leading this to say these technological miracles will happen and save the Australian economy. I mean, this is recklessness beyond belief. Scott Morrison, I mean, what's his technological prowess? He was an advertising guy, wasn't he? Didn't he do the Lara Bingle ad on the beach? I mean, that's his level of expertise in life. He wouldn't know anything more about the commercial market, millions of investment and consumption decisions every day, than my French bulldog sitting at my feet here. So you're entrusting politicians with $20 billion of money in the immediate future for technologies not yet proven to do things that, by his own admission, China, Indonesia, India, you can add to that Russia and Brazil are not doing. So what sort of mugs are Australia?
Rita, what do you think?
Well, Mark says it's not commercially viable. Well, yeah, that's why the billionaires have their hand out for taxpayer funds. This is a rent-seeking exercise for the big end of town. And we've essentially signed up to a plan which is not costed, which they can't tell us precisely how it will be delivered. It's just on the hope that down the track there will be some sort of new technology that will make this feasible. And straight away, Labor and the left are saying, well, it's meaningless because it's the 2030 targets that we care about. So you wonder really if this is going to appease anybody whose vote was going to be switched based on climate change policies. So I think this is an enormous misstep from the Prime Minister, from the coalition, and they're going to have a damn hard time convincing the base that they haven't completely betrayed everything they've said up until this point. And we had the climate change election last time. The people voted, and here we are. We've got the coalition embracing Labor's policies, the losing side's policies.
Yeah, I mean, Nick, we're in a scenario here where the Prime Minister is focusing on saying, look, it's exactly the same as what I said about 2030. It is a change to 2030 to 2050. Again, the politics that you see in all of that, when he tries to cast himself as man in the middle compared to all the people who say what they're doing is not enough. What do you think?
Well, look, in politics, you're never going to please everybody, are you? And the problem with Scott Morrison there is he's rolling out a series of slogans, but they don't actually all add up when you hear them in a long-form interview like you just did. I mean, you know, he kept banging on saying this is not going to stop the digging, but of course we do know it's going to stop the digging up of coal. It must in order to reach net zero emissions. So that's just provably not correct, what he's saying there. You asked him the question about nuclear, which I thought was a really good one. He says, well, I'm not going to do that because Labor's got a moratorium against nuclear power. Well, hang on a second, that's Labor. You're Liberal last time I checked. They're in opposition. You're in government last time I checked. Like, where is your leadership, son? And then he sort of starts banging on the tired old trope about Labor and taxes. But then in the next breath, he talks about a new $20 billion technology fund for new, to bring down emissions. Where do you think the $20 billion is coming from? It's going to be paid with new taxes. So when you see it in a long-form interview like that, it all becomes pretty transparently clear that it doesn't make sense.